Now, I don't know much about Thanksgiving. What I do know about it is I wouldn't be celebrating it, as it's asking God to bless and to give thanks to God for the wholesale theft of an entire subcontinent, which led ineluctably to the mass extermination of the people who were already living there, before supplementing the population with millions of black African slaves brought in chains across the Middle Passage. But it's an American thing. What I do know about Thanksgiving is it's on Thursday, and that is a tight deadline indeed that Donald Trump has given Volodymyr Zelensky, or appeared to give him. With Trump, you must cancel my last announcement. With Trump, it will depend upon who sat upon him last, like that famous sofa in Oscar Wilde's aphorism. The deadline of Thursday set complete panic in the ranks of the Zelensky gang in Kiev. After all, two of his closest allies and most important people in Kiev, in government circles, have literally fled to Israel. Where else are they going to flee? They're accused of being thieves. They have the right to go to Israel because they're Jewish, so they've gone, and they're never coming back. And others are in other capitals and in other countries. And that's because of the massive corruption scandal which our friend Larry Johnson, the former CIA analyst, estimates at a $45 billion theft, making it easily the greatest theft ever recorded in human history. 45 billion. I want you to concentrate on the word billion. Try this to help you concentrate. If you turned the clock back 1,000,000 minutes, you'd reach 2023. If you turned the clock back 1,000,000,000 minutes, you'd reach the Roman Empire. That's right. That's the difference between 1,000,000 and 1,000,000,000. 2023 and the Roman Empire. Because people are so used to hearing the word billion, they have entirely lost, if they ever had, any sense of the gargantuan scale of $1 billion. So try $45 billion. That was funneled in by your government. If you're in the United States, in Britain or France or Germany or any European Union government, and many others outside of the European Union, your government funneled $45 billion that were stolen by Zelensky, his family, and his closest clique associates. No wonder he demanded from President Trump a clause in the Trump 28-point peace plan that granted amnesty to everyone involved in the war. Amnesty or not, Zelensky ain't going to get away with this level of theft. Someone, somewhere, is probably even now contemplating how they're going to hold him accountable, how they're going to recover $45 billion in grand larceny, how they're going to get it back, at least to Ukraine, if not to the other countries whose money it actually was. But I digress. The 28-point plan by Donald Trump, to be agreed by Thursday, is the basis for a peace agreement, no doubt. General Kellogg, the stooge of the regime in Kiev, has declared it so. Trump has declared it so. Vance, who's keenest of all, has declared it so. Rubio, who's not remotely keen, has declared it so. And most importantly, the Russian government, President Vladimir Putin, has also said that it is the basis for a settlement. So it could all be over by Thanksgiving, or at least be over by Christmas, or maybe the Orthodox Christmas, or I don't know, maybe Easter. But it should now be coming to an end, and could now be coming to an end. A conflict that has cost the lives of well over 1 million people. 1 million Ukrainians alone. The dispersal of 9 million Ukrainians who've left their country, are living near you, are living on you, and may never leave you, have been sent spilling around the Western world, looking for a place to avoid being drafted from. And who can blame them? One sees the pictures, the videos of the brutal press ganging of young men and very old men, and now also women in Ukraine, drafted to go to the front, perchance to die within a week, to defend the robbing barons of the Kiev dictatorship, whose democratic legitimacy is gone with the wind. But the cost to Ukraine of this, which has of course been the major loser, is not just measurable in blood, or even blood and treasure. It must be measurable in land. Every single day that a peaceful settlement of this conflict is delayed, the Russian armed forces are helping themselves to a bigger and bigger part of Ukraine. As my friend Che Bose always puts it, Ukraine will be smaller tomorrow than it was today. And that is true every single day. And now, major cities, Pavlovsk, the country, towns, villages, cities, major infrastructure are either being destroyed or they are being taken. And Kupiansk, the town I told you about right at the beginning of the conflict, when I said who wants to send their son to die, to decide which side of a line Kupiansk will lie on, when it has lain in 4 different countries in the last 100 years. Well, I can now tell you that Kupiansk will lie in Russia. And much else besides, if this peace deal isn't honored, isn't implemented, either by Thanksgiving or at least, one hopes, by Christmas. And so any sane person would have already concluded that now is the time to finish this thing by negotiation before more lives are lost, before more treasure is burned, before more land is lost, and, well, frankly, before the European economies in particular are simply no longer able to even make the promises that they are currently making but cannot keep. Well, that's what a sane person would think. But our leaders are not sane. Starmer ain't sane. Macron is roaming around Paris like Caligula. Merz, true to his great-grandfather and his service in the Nazi inner circle, Hitler's inner circle, yes, the Reich Chancellor in Berlin now is the grandson of one of Hitler's inner circle. You really couldn't make it up. If that patch of hair on the middle of his rather receding hairline were placed underneath his powerful nose, I think you'd get the picture very clearly. Merz, Macron, Starmer. What's the other fella in Finland? Stubbs. Stubbs. We've got a Rutte and we've got a Stubbs in this picture too. These people are not sane. These are not well men. They can't be, because they are watching their political fortunes disappear down the drain as fast as they are pouring their country's hard-earned and much-needed cash into. They formed an alternative plan. As you'd expect, Their alternative plan is utterly ridiculous. I mean, so ridiculous, you'll laugh out loud. Trump's plan rules out NATO membership forever for Ukraine. The European leaders' counter plan is that Ukraine must be free to join NATO anytime it likes. Trump's plan says cut the Ukrainian armed forces to a figure 8 times greater than the armed forces of the United Kingdom. Bad enough. But the European leaders' plan is no cap on the Ukrainian armed forces at all. Trump's plan excludes foreign armies entering Ukraine. The European leaders demand to be allowed to send their sons at your expense indefinitely to be an occupation force in Ukraine. I could go on, but we've got expert guests that will go on and give us chapter and verse. But put it this way: the European peace plan is a war plan. If any line of it is incorporated, it will render null and void Putin's declaration that Trump's plan might be the basis for a settlement. So be sure that your leader's plan is for you to go on in fuel poverty, paying 4 times at least the bill for electricity and gas than you were before this conflict broke out in its current form almost 4 years ago. Be sure your leaders are planning to send your sons to a war for which side of a line Kupiansk will reside for the next 100 years. Be sure that your leaders intend for the large-scale theft of your resources to continue, for no justice to be visited on the thieves of the century. It is your leader's plan that a war will continue to rage in Europe, pregnant with the possibility of being the harbinger of World War III. That's your leader's peace plan. There they are on the screen behind me. They couldn't muster 20% approval between them. Between them, 10 and 9 is their current public approval rating, but they are spending your country's money and risking your people's blood and perpetual war in Europe. And we have, I've said this before, the now grotesquely bizarre situation that a right-wing Republican president of the United States is trying to stop a European war, while the milquetoast couldn't punch their way out of a wet paper bag social and Christian Democrats in Europe and in the United Kingdom who are demanding that the war must continue and that you must continue to pay for it. Who will win? I can't predict. Rubio just said he's met Ukraine. It was a great meeting, and he's going to change some of President Trump's plans accordingly. Whether President Trump knows that and approves it or not, I suppose we'll have to wait on Truth Social to discover. But anything that Rubio changes at the behest of the Ukrainians makes it far less likely that the Russians will accept it. And why should they? It's not the losers of a war who dictate the terms of its ending. It is the winners of a war who do so. And who, in their right mind, will now deny that Russia has won the war in Ukraine. I've only time to deal with a couple of other points. First one was what I said in the introduction. What a stroke of luck, or what a blunder, take your pick, when Elon Musk said he'd now publish the origin of Twitter accounts. Didn't last long, but my goodness, people are quick at the old screenshotting. Turns out the US government, Department of Homeland Security, has its Twitter account started in Israel and operated from Israel. What's that about? Turns out that Hate Not Hope, the campaign group that worked hard to get me out of the British Parliament, operates its Twitter account from the United States of America. Turns out, like that Talk Sport advert, you remember? You think you're talking to a buxom blonde beauty in the Ukraine and proposing marriage, but you're actually talking to a 20-stone boilermaker in Middlesbrough. Turns out that all these winsome, blonde, blue-eyed Israeli women soldiers that you may very well have been arguing with if you weren't lusting over are actually Nigerians and Indians. It turns out that almost all of the bots operated by Israel are operating from India and Nigeria. I don't know what it is about India and Nigeria that makes them so, well, conducive to a job scamming. I myself used to regularly get letters from a Nigerian prince. You know me, good man, he called himself. And if only I would send him my bank account details, he'd kindly deposit several £1,000,000 for no reason in said account. Well, it turns out that Nigeria and India, I don't know what other economy is going on there, but my God, there's a whole lot of tweeting going on under false colours, false pretenses in both of those countries. I did have one other thing to say, but I've run out of time. Stay tuned. We have got the European expert on the European counter-peace plan, Professor Glenn Deason. He's up right next. Stay tuned.